We ended our last history video when Porfirio Diaz sat on the presidential chair after defeating the Lerdistas and the Iglesistas, followers of Lerdo de Tejada and Iglesias. He was president between 1877 and 1911, few months after the outbreak of the Mexican Revolution, when he abandoned the country to go into exile. He was a hero of the struggle between conservatives and imperialists. He was younger than Benito Juárez and Lerdo de Tejada. He chose to study the military career and obtain the degree of general. He contended 3 times for the presidency, but was defeated on 2 occasions by Juárez and 1 by Lerdo de Tejada. He opposed re-election and struggled to reduce the executive faculties, strengthen the states and the people's governments, and respect the right of election. He attracted the sympathy of different groups who considered him the only man who could bring peace to the country after 50 years of war against various factions. Finally, in November 1876, he entered Mexico City triumphantly and took over the presidency in 1877. During his first period, he respected the anti-re-election banner, and in 1878, he promoted a constitutional reform against immediate re-election. He turned over the power to his compadre, buddy, Manuel González. With this move, his popularity increased. Meanwhile, he created new strategic alliances and partnerships. He contended again for the presidency and won the election as the only candidate. His second mandate was from 1884 to 1888. However, on this occasion, he had no plans to abandon the presidential chair. In 1884, a constitution reform allowed immediate re-election, that is to say, that the president could re-elect himself for the second time, which allowed him to stay in office until 1892. In 1890, he eliminated from the Constitution all the restrictions of re-election, and in 1903 he extended the presidential period up to 6 years. Without any opposition whatsoever, he claimed electoral triumph from 1892 to 1896, from 1896 to 900, from 900 to 904, and from 904 to 910. Throughout these years, many changes occurred, which would be impossible to mention all. But we will refer to the 2 Porfiriatos, the first and the second stage, and the years of crisis. The first period. The first period starts in 1877 and ends in 1888, when he indefinitely eliminated the restriction of re-election. He dedicated those first years to reconstruct, pacify, unify, conciliate the country, and negotiate with other countries. He started consolidating the different states as a nation and worked the state and society liberal project. To avoid concentration of the power, he divided it into executive power, responsible for executing the laws, legislative, to create them, the judicial, to enforce them. People were responsible for the election of the president, governors, legislators, Supreme Court magistrates. He separated the state from the church and guaranteed liberty of cult, and gave the government responsibility of education and commonwealth. Despite all these changes, many problems persisted in the country. The country needed to consolidate institutions and that the political system be efficient. There was no cohesion or national identity, and foreign intervention was still a threat. Porfirio Díaz's challenges were to unify regional and political forces, grant legitimacy and legality to his government, respecting or at least pretending to respect the Constitution, and above all, international recognition. He did not comply with his commitments with regional and peasant communities and decided to start with conciliation and negotiations. He was loyal to the groups that supported him, and he lured his opponents. He gave recognition to the army that fought with him. He married Carmen Romero Rubio, daughter of a lerdista, a Lerdo de Tejada follower, which improved his relationship with that faction. By 1884, he formed his political cabinet with one Porfirista, two Juaristas, two Lerdistas, one imperialist, and he attracted the Catholic Church, giving them some concessions. These were brilliant moves. He wanted to demonstrate that he was willing to give all different factions a voice. However, his relationship with the chieftains and the farmers' collectivities was not good. His decisions were very variable. In some regions, he respected political autonomy and did not accept the confiscation of properties, and in others, he tolerated confiscation in favor of big corporations. He would also handle different criteria with governors and warlords. He sought loyal men and would give them governorships. He helped them gain wealth, gave them specific liberty and power, but banished them if they did not comply with his will. Porfirio also accomplished international recognition, the third of his goals. He re-established diplomatic relationships with France, England, Germany, and Belgium. He also gained favor from the United States. However, there were many difficulties to overcome, such as a foreign debt, Indians and cattle thieves crossing to Mexico, American troops chasing them, and Mexican workers crossing into the United States. Despite all this, Mexico paid its debt and provided facilities for investors. And in 1878, the United States recognized the Díaz government. However, President Porfirio Díaz was firm in defending national sovereignty. These were difficult times, and Díaz always tried to have consensus through conciliation. But when this was impossible, he chose to use force and repression with the help of the army, the police, and the rural police. The legality of the government was another itchy topic because he appointed the governors and manipulated the deputies' elections. The federal elections were a farce. No one would vote. The voters did not fill in the ballots, but the voting booths were full of them. Porfirio Díaz's regime would oscillate between legality and appearance of legitimacy. Despite all this, he obtained international recognition and national cohesion. He attracted groups of influence to avoid decay nuclei. He formed loyal chains as a foundation of his political building. Next week, we will continue with the second period of the Porfiriato. Loving Mexico thanks you for being with us today. Be sure to subscribe and leave a comment. Continue watching our videos and enjoy loving Mexico.